I'm Chimo Mangazi with Business Time on Times. This is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines. In today's program, Malawi Stock Exchange slumps in the first half. Also in the program, local councils will now transfer government funds directly through the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. The Malawi Stock Exchange recorded a difficult first half of 2026 with the Malawi All Share Index losing value in both quarters amid falling share prices for major counters. According to the MSE 2026 second quarter market performance report, the market recorded a negative index return of negative 8.92%, compared to a positive return of 13.12% recorded during the corresponding period in 2025. This followed a decline of 3.8% in the first quarter, pushing the year-to-date return to negative 12.38%. John Kamanga is MSE Chief Executive Officer.
I would say the first half of 2026, volumes have picked up, but the challenge which we've had is that there's been a capital loss of about 13%. By capital loss, what we mean is that on average, share prices have gone down in the range of about 13 to 14%. However, within the same period, we have seen certain companies actually which have registered a capital gain. But now, if you put in terms of on average basis, there is that actually capital loss which has experienced, and which I remember I had already said, this is basically a market correction aspect. Because we are coming from, I would say, a capital gain of about 247%. And now with a loss of 13 to 14%, it's just like a knock from the, I would say, the uphill where we were at 247, which if you reduce it by 13%, for those who just bought around, let's say, January last year, they still have a capital gain. That's why you find that when we calculate on year basis, we're still above actually in the positive trajectory of around about 120 or 110% thereabout. So it's not an issue of concern, but what I would say that it's a market corrections, which I've already said that there was a directive from the Registrar of Financial Institutions that because there was too much concentration of the pension funds on the stock market, and now the registrar wanted actually to take what we call precautionary measures in terms of risk mitigating, such that at least if there is going to be a fall, at least there shouldn't be too much loss in terms of the pension funds. And therefore, with that directive, they were directed that at least they should not exceed 60%. So some of them, they're already above 60%, and then they were trying actually to offload those shares to the general public in terms of actually serving the stock market. And if you look at in terms of actually the quantum of ownership of some of these pension funds is quite huge, to the extent that even if they offload 3% or 4% into the market, they create excess supply into the market. And the share price on the stock market is dictated by the market forces of demand and supply. And therefore, if there is more supply, the price will go down. If there is more demand, the price will go up. And that's the forces which actually they were at play at this point in time, where the excess supply of shares, hence the reduction of prices of some of the counters. In the second half, the market is going to bounce back. We believe that it has reached its bottom low, because we have seen in terms of the dividend announcements of most of the companies, and they have also some of the companies who have held their annual general meeting, and those who are going to hold their annual general meeting, there is that actual element of declaration of the final dividend, and then some have already started actually posting what we call trading statement based on actually the results which they're going to have on the 6-month period. And that has also ignited some attraction and actually stimulus in coming into the stock market. So I believe the second half is going to be a much better. And then with this IPO, it's going to reignite the activities on the stock market. And there are lots of activities which are coming in terms of actually some of the, I would say, transaction activities, which are still under consideration. I may not be in a position to go on air, but we're considering some transaction activities which are going to happen in the next half of the actually of 2026. And all of that is also going to be a stimulus in terms of activities on the Malawi Stock Exchange.
Pension industry contributions to the economy continued to grow strongly, reflecting improved compliance and expanded scheme coverage. Total contributions reached 352.4 billion kwacha as of December 2025, largely driven by improved remittance compliance. However, creating awareness would help the sector thrive further, according to Old Mutual Pension Services Company General Manager Taonga Manda. William Kumwembe caught up with Manda in this interview.
So what we have noted is that there has been an increase in hardship withdrawals. We have also seen an increase in pre-retirement withdrawals. But one of the things that we have noted is that many people are not intentional about withdrawals, but they're also not mindful of the impact that it will have at the time when they are retiring.
You play a critical role, call it an advisory role. What would be your advice to someone watching the program now, tempted to withdraw prior to time?
Yeah.
What is your advice?
My advice would be that pension money is let me use this word, it's a sacred money. Mm-hmm. Sacred in the sense that you are doing it you are saving it for a specific cause. It's for your retirement. And you can only make an early withdrawal where it is really, really necessary. One, you're going through what is called hardship. You have not picked up another employment, but you need to survive. That makes sense. But having done that, you should also be intentional to say, once I pick up another employment, let me cover the gap that I created by withdrawing that money, because I've got an aim that I want to achieve at the end of the day. Secondly, if you are doing a pre-retirement withdrawal, which is maybe 5 years or 3 years to your retirement, you should bear in mind that this is a very critical withdrawal because you don't have enough money. If something goes wrong in the usage of that money, you have a very short period to recover. Therefore, be very intentional in terms of what you want to use that money. And if whatever you're doing is preparing you for your retirement, it should be adding value to your retirement. It should be accelerating your comfort levels to your retirement.
When all is said and done, what should we expect from the INDAWA themed reimagining retirement? What should we expect?
People should expect many good things. For people who are going to participate in this conference, they are going to be subject to a conversation, very candid conversation about retirement planning. And more importantly, coming out of the INDAWA, they should be able to go out and tell their employees, their members on pension, why it is important to have a pension, regardless of the era that we're going through, where there's a huge rush to say that let's do early withdrawals, considering our present needs. The INDAWA will be able to equip them with reasons, facts that will support the fact that they still need to persevere what they're going through now for the tomorrow. And they'll be able to have practical experiences of individuals who are living retirement now that will speak to some of the challenges that they're facing now and how they're able to overcome them, and why it was important that they overcome them, and how they're enjoying the benefit. So sometimes you are encouraged by looking at others that have walked the journey. So you'll be able to get those experiences from the people that have walked the journey. But over and above that, they'll also be able to learn from other individuals, not only in Malawi, elsewhere outside Malawi, who are also walking the retirement journey, and some of the challenges that they are facing there, and how they have overcome them, and how, as Malawians in a local setup, we can be able to learn from them and also build our retirement journey. So one, a lot of sharing of ideas will happen. 2, we'll get insights from other people who have walked the journey. And 3, we'll have facts that support that retirement planning is a way to go, even in our setup, even today.
This is Business Time. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Private sector players have urged the Malawi Investment and Trade Center MITC to ensure its next 5-year strategic plan delivers measurable results with clear implementation targets and regular public reporting to attract more investment and boost exports. The calls were made on Monday during the launch of consultative meetings for MITC's strategic plan, where business leaders, development partners, and government officials gathered to shape the institution's future direction. We have more in this report.
Chief Executive Officer for Nico General Insurance, Don Bell Mandala, says the success of the new strategy would depend on implementation rather than the quality of the document itself. He proposed quarterly progress reports through newspapers and broadcasting platforms to allow stakeholders to monitor achievements against planned targets over the 5-year period.
If you look at what they presented, it's just a draft, so they haven't covered the implementation yet. But we believe that our biggest mistake is not driving strategic plans, but it's how we implement. So for us, we would prefer that the implementation should have accountability, should have roadmap, and should also be publicized every time that there is evaluation. So in this case, we'll look for quarterly presentation, either in the papers or through the broadcasting houses, to say here we are at this level, and we anticipate at the next quarter we'll be at this level, and then track down up to the 5 years that they are putting in.
International economic development expert and team leader for the Tikudze Malawi project, Trevor Simumba, says the new strategy should respond to changing global trade trends by embracing digitalization, value addition, and opportunities under the African Continental Free Trade Area, ACFTA.
The main issue has been that the previous strategic plan did not adequately deal with the emerging issues, in terms of digitalization, in terms of the change in market dynamics, and of course the rapid realization of the Continental Free Trade Area. So this new strategic plan needs to reflect these 3 factors, because these are critical to the success. With digitalization, Malawi has an opportunity to be able to participate at a global level without necessarily physically having to move. All right, so a Malawian can sit in their office, in their farm, and actually sell their product digitally and be able to transport it and everything done digitally. Okay, so digitalization is going to be a critical importance moving forward. Diversification of Malawian products. Okay, instead of us continuing to export raw material, we start processing. So soybean, instead of sending it as soybean, you process it into cooking oil. The soya cake, you produce animal feed, okay? Together with, you mix it with the gaga, which comes from the milli meal. When you produce milli meal, there's always that, the grits, what we call the grits. Yeah, when you combine that with the soya cake, it's very good animal feed, okay? Then we can, and then even with the livestock industry, you can process, you can cut pieces of meat into processed cuts that you can export. Okay. And Malawi has a history of what we know halal, which is an acceptable standard for into the Middle East. Middle East is demanding livestock products every day, goats, cattle, chickens, all types of livestock. So there are many areas where Malawi can begin to move forward and develop structures, what we call value-added products.
Investment and Trade Promotion Manager at MITC, Morton Gonzalo, says consultations on the new strategic plan were building on achievements made under the previous strategy while addressing areas that still require improvement.
The predecessor strategic plan has managed to achieve a lot of things. For example, we've improved investment promotion and facilitation. We have also enhanced export promotion. We have also strengthened our one-stop service center. But we have also made some progress in development of special economic zones. Yeah, in the predecessor strategic plan, we are also looking at enhancing visibility in the issue of digitalizing our processes. Much progress has been done, but we acknowledge that there is room for improvement. There are a number of areas. For example, we are looking at converting leads, investment leads, into actual investment. As you heard, some people were complaining that we've heard of investment pledges, but on the ground there isn't much to show. So this new strategic plan is addressing that issue. Another issue that is also in the new strategic plan is that we are looking at diversifying our export basket. Yes, we are also looking at reducing manual processes so that everything should be digital as the world is going into digital.
The consultations are expected to gather views from the private sector, development partners and other stakeholders before the 5-year strategic plan is finalized and implemented.
Local councils have started receiving training to enable them process and transfer government funds directly through the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS. This follows government's decision to devolve the responsibility from the National Local Government Finance Committee. But what impact would this have on public finance management? A question for Director of IFMIS in the Accountant General's Department, Masauko Kumwenda.
The SAB IFMIS is helping to address issues of missing documentation. The other aspect I've mentioned of the asset management module, which was not activated in EPICO, but we have activated in SAP and it's currently in use. With this, any asset which is procured through the SAP-based IFMIS is automatically updated in the asset register. So the asset register, it's within the system. Unlike in the past, we had to rely on manual maintenance of asset registers. Where you procure an asset, you have to go and manually record it in an asset register to update the asset register, which in many cases, most users in the MTS were not doing. But this time around, you are procuring an asset through IFMIS. Automatically, records of that particular assets are stored within the IFMIS. The asset register gets updated. So you run a report from the IFMIS. It will give you details of all the assets which a particular MDA or Ministry or Department procured for that particular year. Based on what we've procured now, or assets which have been procured ever since we implemented the asset module in IFMIS, all those records are there, and in terms of the values, and again, maybe this is also supplementing the approach which government has taken, implementing the accrual. Government is moving towards what is known as accrual accounting. We are moving away from cash basis, where an asset was being expensed in the year it is procured. And with that, you couldn't keep any records of the asset which you procured. But with the accrual, you expect even to include the assets of government in a balance sheet. So come end of the year, you are preparing your financial statements. Government is also now able to produce, with this movement towards accrual, we are able now to recognize our assets in our financial statements and the value So we are moving also to recognize the values of the assets. So those assets which currently have been procured through the system, their values are there. We are now struggling with the legacy assets which were procured before the implementation of the IFMIS. As a department, we've been moving around the country to look at those assets. We've engaged various experts to value the assets, so that once we determine the values of those assets, we update. Ultimately, we update the IFMIS once we're finished with the issue of the asset valuation. So I think this is a process which has just started, targeting the legacy assets. I think the initial process started with the valuation of motor vehicles. I think now there is a team, there's a specific department within, or division within Accountant General, which is looking at government assets. So now they have moved to valuing buildings, government buildings and land. So ultimately the idea is to also take those values, upload them in IFMIS, so that we update, we have a complete picture, at least to a greater extent, of the assets which government has. So eventually, I think with these various reforms, we hope it will be easy at a click of a button in the future to say, run a report which will give you the value of the assets which government has. But it's let me admit, it's not going to be an overnight exercise. You know, government assets are all over the country. We have got houses in deep areas. So all those means they have to be valued. We have to engage experts. We can't do it ourselves. We're not experts in valuing the lands, buildings. We have to engage experts, so they have to move around. They value those assets. We get the values. Once the values are determined, we update IFMIS, so that going forward, there were queries in the past regarding MTS not maintaining asset registers. But going forward, because all this will be within the IFMIS, obviously we'd like to see those falling off.
Well, with that story, we've come to the end of today's edition of Business Time here on Times Television. It is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, I am Chimama Mangazi. But always remember, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Bye for now.